Probably my favorite part about filmmaking is designing shots. So I'm going to walk you all through some of the processes that I take and some of the tools that I use to translate script to screen. When I first receive a script, I try to do an initial read without too many impressions of my own. It isn't until the second time that I read through the script that I will notate any ideas that I might have and break the script down. And usually I do this by color coding, like if there's anything that specifically calls out lighting, any red flags, like technically if I think something's gonna be a really challenging sequence or something worth discussing with the director or production, maybe I'll mark that in red. Just like a good script and how characters can evolve, how do our visuals evolve? Are there contrasting worlds or visual parallels? Do you have a fractured structure? Is the film designed more like a mosaic? How does the visual intensity correlate with the dramatic intensity of the story? Maybe your goal isn't to call too much attention to the cinematography and letting the story and the actors really do their own thing and imposing as little as possible. I have a little list that I use when I'm breaking down something with a director, just kind of dissecting the story and what we want to do. Now, I'm someone who really likes to think about these concepts and plan them out, but I've also been on projects where a director is really not trying to dissect it like this. And in that case, we're really embracing a little bit more of a intuitive approach. I think especially when there's shoots where you don't have a lot of time to work on setups, sometimes you have to just trust your intuition, and some of the most beautiful things come out of that. I think a good visual storyteller needs to know what their perspective is and what they're trying to say in any given scene. At that point, it doesn't really matter if you've shot listed the 6 or 7 things that you're really trying to do, or if you're going into it with an open mind and kind of discovering in the moment. I do have a templated shot list that I use. Sometimes I'm very specific with it, listing frame rates and white balances and film stocks or equipment needed, and sometimes I'm pretty loose with it. Sometimes me and the director are shot listing every single shot. Sometimes one line in the shot list can really just be communicating, hey, in this scene, this is the main idea that we're trying to get across. Whatever shots that we do from there, great, but as long as it accomplishes that one thing, then we're set, we're covered. In a perfect world, I'm creating a shooting order shot list in addition to a narrative order shot list. Certain scenes that need particular time of day scheduling might not be able to have a final say about the time of day of every scene, but ideally you can at least give some input so they can keep that in mind. So when I'm conceptualizing a film, I try to not look too much to just film references. I really try to pull from other things, whether that's photography or painting or even a dance or a rhythm quality might be the inspiration for how I'm approaching a scene. I encourage everyone to look beyond filmmaking to see what could inspire their work. I personally love storyboards. I think being able to illustrate your ideas on a paper, whether that's yourself or someone else, is a super valuable skill to have. But I've also gotten a lot of great experiences working with other storyboard artists, and oftentimes, if they're a good artist, those images are actually inspiring me to make better work versus putting me in a box. Seeing the images that they push towards us, I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have even thought about that, and now I'm chasing that image. Or even in concept artwork, if someone has a really lovely painting of a scene or a set build that we're trying to do, I might look at that and be like, all right, screw whatever I was thinking, that's the way to go. Best idea wins. I will sometimes scribble down storyboards in my notebook. I've also used flashcards, and that's a good way to work on an isolated image and put it in a stack and throw them up on the wall. Sometimes I'll do that if I'm just first breaking down a script. Like I get all these ideas in my head, and even though they're not assigned to any specific order, I might write them down on flashcards and then maybe find ways to incorporate them later if I do have like a really specific idea. Naturally, there are times when you go through all this work, all this planning, all this thinking in your head, and then you get on set and you have to throw it all out the window. And that's okay. I think it's important that you still get this backlog and a solid idea of what the film could be, even if you do have to kind of disregard it. I mean, it's a film set. Sometimes that's gonna happen. I really try to maintain an open mind when stepping on set because you never know how plans are gonna change, and I think it's important to be adaptable when these situations arise. Me and a director one time had a dinner scene shot listed out. We knew exactly all these perspectives that we wanted to do, but guess what? The location changed, We had half the amount of time to shoot it. That was a situation where we couldn't really think too much about everything and how we're gonna rearrange it. We just had to react and use our instincts. And I think it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the film because it was disregarding of any sort of concepts or structures that we had put up ahead of time. It was simply our stream of consciousness flowing out in that moment, and I think that translated in a really beautiful way. I think in that sense, it builds a lot of tools in your tool belt to be able to handle a lot of situations differently.